t is supposed to be the best. All right, so so we're gonna go where we left off yesterday, and we're just gonna do one more problem like what we did yesterday, and then we'll get into the new stuff for today, okay? Make sure your phones are away, please. Okay, so what we're gonna do first is just review one question from yesterday. So we're gonna multiply these two. So we have x minus 5 times x plus 3 equals 4 times a negative 3 is negative 12, okay? Then what we're gonna do is FOIL. And if you guys remember FOIL, it's first, outside, inside, and last. Okay, so what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna FOIL this. The f is first, so that's x times x, which is x squared. The o is outside, so that's x times 3, which is 3x. The I is inside, which is those two, which is negative 5x. L is last, which is negative 5 times 3, which is negative 15. And then to save a step, you can bring that negative 12 over and change its sign, and that would equal 0. Okay? Now we're going to combine like terms, so we'd get x squared. 3x minus 5x is negative 2x. Negative 15 plus 12 is negative 3, and that equals 0. Okay? Then like we talked yesterday, the x squared goes here. The negative 3 goes here as well as here. And then whatever is in front of your x with the sign goes here. So can you guys think of two numbers that multiply to give you a negative 3, Christian?
Negative 3, 1.
Yes. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. And as I was telling you guys, as you get better at this, and you may never, like my son took calc through calc 2 or 3, and he always did a box that he learned in 8th grade from his 8th grade teacher. So some kids get away from doing that, some kids always use it, but you don't have to. These are there to help you. If you learned factoring really well last year and you're good at it and you don't need that, don't feel like you have to do it. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a negative 3x in one box and a 1x in the other box. And then we're gonna decide what do we have to multiply. So what times what gives us x squared? That's x and x. What times x gives us negative 3x? That's a negative 3. X times what gives us 1x is 1. And in between that is a plus then that we would put. And negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. So now one of our factors is x minus 3. One is x plus 1. And that equals 0. Okay? Then when you go to do that last step and we solve for x, we do the opposite of this, which is 3, opposite of this, which is negative 1. So that is what we learned yesterday, okay? And I was telling you guys that the whole chapter, we're going to be doing proportions. So like today and tomorrow, we're just reviewing proportions. Tomorrow, instead of having a homework assignment, you're going to have a quiz on what you learned Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that's just gonna be a quiz that you're going to do kind of as homework, but it would be graded as a quiz, okay? So this one here says, a tight end scored 6 touchdowns in 14 games. Find the ratio of touchdowns per game. Ratio means like a fraction. When we're doing ratios, we're gonna do a fraction, and they want touchdowns on top and games on the bottom. When you do this, though, you have to reduce fractions if you can. What goes into 6 and 14? 2, right? 2 goes in here 3 times, 2 goes in here 7 times. Don't write them as a decimal, even if the book asked you to, leave them as a fraction, a reduced fraction. Now this one says the number of students who participate in sports programs at high school, at Recoria High School, is 470. The total number of students in the school is 835. Find the athlete to student ratio to the nearest 10, okay? So the people that are in sports programs is 470. The total people in the high school is 835. Now, I'm gonna show you guys a trick to do if you have a graphing calculator that will help you reduce a fraction like this if you wanna do it a little bit easier. So if you guys take out your calculators, and I believe this only works on a Texas Instrument. I'm not sure about the Casio.
I'll see what you do and I'll tell you what it works.
Okay, so here's the deal. You are going to enter this as a division problem. So you're gonna go 470, divided by 835, okay? And you could hit enter if you want to, you don't have to. And how you can get this to reduce it is you can hit this math button right here, okay? And if you notice, number 1 says you're changing it to a fraction, and you have to hit that twice. So how you can do that is just hit enter twice. So if you do it as a division problem, and then hit math, enter, it'll reduce it down for you, okay? And that shows you 94 over 167. Now, a lot of you could have just noticed, oh, that's divisible by 5. So I can divide by 5 and then look again, could I reduce it and go from there? Yeah.
So mine has 2 ways. I either do the division and I just have a button to switch. I can just tap to switch it between decimals and mixed numbers. Or I can just type it in as a fraction and just hit enter and it reduces it automatically.
Perfect. Good. Does anyone else have a Casio in here? Graphing calculator? Okay. So that was 94 over 167. Now notice in this problem, it says to do it to the nearest 10. I don't want you to do that. I want you to always leave it as a reduced fraction, even if the book tells you to do it to the nearest 10. Okay? Now, let's go to this. This is one type of question that you guys will have in your assignment as well as on your quiz tomorrow, where it tells you that you have a triangle and it tells you the ratio of the measures of the sides. Now, in geometry, if you ever see a ratio like this, we did one earlier this year, maybe 1 or 2 problems, that's it. What you can do, you know that that's the ratio, but you don't know what the numbers are, so you can put X with each of them. Okay, so when they're in a ratio, you put X with each of them. Now, here's what this is saying. It's saying we have a triangle, and our sides are in the ratio of 4x to 6x to 9x. Then it also says that the perimeter is 190. Okay? So here is what we would do. We would write an equation, and if it's perimeter, you'd add around. So you'd go 4x plus 6x plus 9x, and that's going to equal the whole perimeter, which is 190. Okay? 4x plus 6x plus 9x is 19x equals 190. Then we're going to divide by 19. And when you divide that, x is 10. Okay? But then you're going to look back at what exactly did they want? And they want the longest side of the triangle. So if you took that 10, the longest side is going to be the one that's 9 times x, and you would just put 10 in there, and 9 times 10 is 90, so that would be your answer. If it asked you for all 3 sides, you just put 10 in for all of those. Then you're going to have some questions that look like this, and this is something you have done for a number of years, and I'll have the video and stuff set up, okay? You know what? Maybe not. It's probably on screen. Okay? All right, when we look at this, you guys, you probably learned this in middle school or before, where you went 3 times 75, and you might have typed that into your calculator already, and then you set it equal to 5x. Then you would actually figure out what's 3 times 75, and that is 225 equals 5x. And then you divide by 5, and when you do that, x would equal 45. Okay? I'm guessing that's how most of you do it. Okay? There is a shortcut way to do proportions that I'm going to show you, and the reason I'm showing you this is for the rest of this chapter, we do a lot of proportions like that, and it's super easy to do them just typing it into your calculator. And when you do that, when it works is when you have an x or some variable, and the other 3 numbers are just plain numbers, they don't have an x with them. Okay? How you do this is you find the 2 numbers that are across from each other that are not variables, and you multiply them. So you're going to go into your calculator and you're going to go 3 times 75, and then you divide by the one that's opposite your x. Have you guys ever done that before? Okay. So you can just go and type into your calculator 3 times 75 divided by 5, and is that 70? No.
45.
45. Okay. So it's just a shorter way to do these if you want to. You don't have to, but that's just a little bit quicker way. So in this one, if I did it that way, which 2 would I multiply? Yep, so I'd go 10 times 21, and then I would divide it by the 7. And you don't have to write anything. You can just type in your calculator 10 times 21 divided by 7, and did you get 30? Okay. All right, when I stop doing it that way is when something is with my x, or if I have another thing in my proportion that has an x. So when I have something like this, I do it the way that you learned it from the beginning. So I would multiply these 2 still, and 20 times 6 is 120, and then I would multiply this, and 5 times 4x is 20x, and then I would just go ahead and solve it by dividing by 20. 120 divided by 20 is 6, so that's your answer. Okay. Then when I look at D, again, I'm gonna multiply these two, and I'm not gonna use that shortcut way, so I have 2 times x plus 1 equals 3 times 7, which is 21, okay? Then you would just distribute your 2, and we'd get 2x plus 2 equals 21. Subtract 2, and I would get 2x equals 19. Divide by 2, and this is going to be one where we get a decimal, and that's okay. It was when you had to find a ratio that you leave it as a fraction. Here you could leave this as 19 over 2, or you could divide it out and get 9.5. So when you're solving for x, you can get a decimal. Okay? Now if we look at this one, we're going to multiply this, and that would be 2 times 3x minus 5 equals 4 times a negative 13. And that would be negative 52. Okay? Now I'm going to distribute. 2 times 3x is 6x, minus 2 times 5 is 10, and that equals negative 52. Then I'm going to bring my 10 over, and I get 6x equals negative 42. Divide by 6, and x is negative 7. Okay. Now if I look at G, again, I'm going to cross multiply. So I go 4 times 2x plus 3 equals 8 times 5, which is 40. I distribute my 4. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times 3 is 12, and that equals 40. Then I subtract 12, and I get 8x equals 28. Divide by 8, and you could reduce 24 over 8. That would reduce down to what, 7 halves? Or if you divided it out, it would be 3.5. Okay. Then if I look at this one, I think I'm gonna have you guys skip this one because this one's harder. When you go to factor it, it's harder, and you're not gonna see one like this. So let's just skip this one. Okay. And then let's go to this one. Okay, so here we would cross multiply. What's 4x times x? Yep.
4x squared.
4x squared. And then if you do 108 times 3, that's going to be 324. Then we divide by 4, and we get x squared equals 81. Do you know what to do when you have x squared? Square root. Now, in the past, when we've done square roots, we've always just wrote down 9. When it's not a geometry problem, it's just an algebra problem, you really need to put plus or minus 9. We have not done that yet this year because every time we took the square root, it was the side of a triangle, and so it had to be positive. This is just an algebra problem, so it doesn't have to be positive. So, I have a note to myself where these numbers are different than what's on the worksheet. So we won't even look at that. We will, oh, I think what I did is I left this in Schoology as a link. So let me just make sure you can open that. So if we go to your class, so if it's something that I can try to save paper for, I will. So today's is here, and what you want to look at is what I tell you to do up in this upper right corner, okay? So you will do whatever ones are on here, and then just do that in your notebook, and then turn it in, okay?
What was that? Yeah, go ahead.